go meet the sun. Ah, yeah. Surrounded by the presence, surrounded by a friend. The source of all creation allows me to begin. The source of all creation allows me to begin again. Ale, alleluia. Ale, alleluia. Ale, alleluia. Ale, alleluia.
Hi, this is Michael Jackson. Ricky, I really love what you and Reverend Michael Beckwith has done in creating the sound of agape with your beautiful music. God bless you.
Peace and riches blessings to you. This is Michael Bernard Beckwith, the founder and spiritual director of the Agape International Spiritual Center and the author of Spiritual Liberation, Life Visioning, Fulfilling Your Soul's Potential, and 40-Day Mind Fast Soul Feast. You're entering now into the vibration of Wake Up, the Sound of Transformation, a weekly program that invites you to discover not only who and what you really are, but to embrace the evolutionary impulse that governs all creation, that you may live up to your true potential, that you may anchor the realm of ever-expanding good, the realm of excellence on earth as it is in the mind of the infinite. Today, you're listening with the ear beyond the ear, that you can begin to catch that there's something magnificent about you and that your life is an on purpose with a purpose. Week after week, we will have powerful guests who have embodied spiritual principles and who are activating their own potential to begin to assist in the birthing of a kind and just global society of which you are to be a soulful participant. Listen with the ear beyond the ear and feel absolutely that there is something so good about you that it must be expressed. You have entered into the vibration of Wake Up, the Sound of Transformation.
Come on, I'm taking an adventure in paradise. In paradise. And guess what? I'm taking you with me.
That's right. This is Wake Up, the Sound of Transformation, and this is Michael Bernard Beckwith on our special program today. And you're tuning in at a time in which, of course, KPFK is raising tremendous dollars for the ongoingness of this powerful, magnificent studio. I have with me today Mackenzie Phillips. She's an actress and singer best known for her roles in the movie American Graffiti and as a rebellious teenager Julie Cooper on the TV sitcom One Day at a Time. She's most recently known for her role on Disney's Channel's science fiction show So Weird. She's a daughter of John Phillips, lead singer of the 60s band The Mamas and the Papas. As a troubled teen star, made several visits to rehab before getting sober. Her struggles with addiction have been well documented in her courageous New York Times best-selling memoir, High on Arrival, making her Hollywood's go-to person on substance abuse and a visible and outspoken advocate for addiction awareness and education. She now wishes to use her past experiences to help others and offer hope to individuals who are struggling with substance abuse and addiction in her new book, Hopeful Healing, Essays on Managing Recovery and Surviving Addiction. In this latest release, Mackenzie shares short essays that include personal stories, along with first-step motivations for the addict who is looking to or perhaps struggling to recover. In it, she addresses mindfulness, failure, hope, trust, acceptance, and other prominent themes in the life of an addict. She offers encouragement and open honesty from someone who knows what it means to hit rock bottom. She knows exactly what addicts, family members, and support systems are facing in these challenging times and offers personal and professional stories to help people reach each other on the more hopeful side of sobriety. By the way, she'll be at Agape this Sunday on the 26th, doing a book signing after both services, after the 9 a.m. service and after the 11:30 services. Mackenzie, how you doing today?
I am doing so well. You know, when the music was playing, I'm in a hotel in Dallas. I'm on the tail end of my book tour.
Yes.
And I got to tell you, Reverend, I woke up. I started dancing around my hotel room while I was listening to the music and just feeling so present in the moment that I get to spend with you. It was so wonderful. I really, like you talking about waking up, I woke up. That was really nice.
Outstanding. That particular song is from my CD called Transcendence. I'm inviting people into paradise, into ever-expanding good on that particular CD. So I'm glad that it moved you a bit.
It absolutely did its thing.
Now, for those listening who may not be familiar with your personal life story outside of your film and TV credits, your personal living history with ultimately transcending addiction. Tell us just a little bit about your story, and I'll ask you some more questions as we get into this.
Okay, well, as you mentioned, I kind of grew up in a left-of-center environment, with my dad who was, Papa John, and it was a little wild. I mean, it was, the early 70s, and all around were, I guess if we're looking at people to model behavior for us, then I was modeled a very sort of irresponsible and wild type of behavior, although I don't blame the people. They were just doing their thing.
Right.
And also there's a genetic component to addiction. And so the first time I started experimenting at a very young age, it sort of like woke up the monster, that sleeping monster of a genetic predisposition to addiction.
Right.
That doesn't awaken until the substance is introduced. I mean, before that, it can manifest in other types of behaviors. But once the substance is introduced, the addiction starts to wake up. And that happened to me at a very young age, and it was certainly not without serious spiritual, physical, emotional consequences. But as you said, this is transcending my condition. This is a transcendence over my genetic makeup into a beautiful representation of triumph.
Right.
Over all odds.
Right. Hopeful healing. Essays on managing recovery and surviving addiction. Now, your book brings together addiction and hope, which you say are two things that aren't normally associated with each other. Talk about that for a second.
Well, mostly when you think of the word hope in relation to the word addiction, you would think hopeless. You wouldn't think hopeful. And I think that is a viewpoint that we need to shift, that while there is breath, there is hope, that the infinite allows breath so the person can become hope in action. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yes, absolutely.
And also I'm a big fan of alliteration, a hopeful healing, the double H, and I thought it was a lovely sentiment, and it had a nice sound, and it felt good on the tongue, and I thought it was a lovely title for a book.
Yeah, I think so, because I think that even though those words don't go together at times, a person who's struggling with any kind of addiction will see hopeful healing. And I think it just does something to the heart. It opens them up and says, oh, possibility. There's a possibility that I don't have to live like this for the rest of my days. And,
we awaken to the world of possibility.
Right. Now, one of the things you write is one of the most powerful things you can do for yourself is to dive deep into understanding your addiction, to clearly and honestly tell your story for yourself, all of your history, your behavior within that history, and what role your addiction played in that. Speak about that for a moment. Because you did that very honestly in High on Arrival.
Exactly. I did that in High on Arrival, and I think that it's important that when we do dive deep into our story, we're not living in the cave while we're doing it. The leading with the type of diving deep into the story instead of from an awakened point of view diving into the story. Because if we dive into the story while we're still in the proverbial cave of addiction, we could actually reinforce the old behaviors as opposed to break them down.
So you're talking about diving into the story, but from a different point of view.
That's correct, because everything can appear exactly the same if you look at it over and over from the same point of view, right? But if you just shift your state of being a little to the left or a little to the right, you can see it in a different light, and you can see that you can have a different experience.
Absolutely. Now, you speak about resiliency and recovery as well. Resiliency and recovery. Riff on that.
Well, like I talked about, I think that there's a spectrum of resiliency, that some people tend to be slightly more resilient than others. That sort of bounce back from addiction can be easier for others than it is for some. And I think it's important to know that although you might be lower on the scale of resiliency, that there's still possibility and to just keep going. Because I think that God is somehow connected to the idea of resiliency, of I can do this, I can do this. Because if we're doing it from just a solitary standpoint, things are much more difficult. But if we bring the infinite or the majestic into our experience, things seem to sparkle a little bit more and seem easier to do.
Right. We get a sense that we're not alone. Whatever it is that we're dealing with, we're not alone. There is some presence that's never an absence that's for us, and then it allows us to become for ourselves. We realize something is for us, so we can then in turn become for ourselves and begin to hear wisdom and guidance and take those particular steps. Because most people who overcome great challenges, whether it's addiction to whatever the addiction behavior is, at some point, people often report that there was something bigger than them that was within them that made all the difference. That it wasn't just their little ego. Matter of fact, their ego got them in trouble in the first place.
Your ego is not your amigo.
Right. Now, one of the things that are very close to my heart, because I teach meditation, is the role of mindfulness in recovery. Mm-hmm. Talk about that for a moment.
Well, I think that in active addiction, you're not mindful of anything. You're basically crashing through the day, trying to just get through it. And as you begin to recover and begin to sort of settle back into your own body, your own mind, and your own heart, it's really important. It's really important for me, let me put it that way, to do what I was doing while I was doing it. You know, to put my focus on the task.
Yes.
Because I can complicate everything, and my head can be 500 miles away, but my body's doing something in the present moment, and I try to align them so that we can be together doing what we're doing while we're doing it, and the awareness that the moment is the most beautiful thing that there is.
Absolutely. I know someone who stopped smoking cigarettes because they were very mindful about smoking. They weren't thinking about the next cigarette after the cigarette they were smoking. They consciously smoked the cigarette they had, just being very aware of every puff with the intention to not smoke anymore. And it became such a mindful experience that they actually broke the addiction. They actually didn't have to have a cigarette in the next moment or the next hour, and they don't smoke to this day. But they were very mindful.
Wow.
Now, I'm not advocating that people do that. I'm just saying that I know someone who was very mindful in their bad habit until they transcended. They became aware of the individual that was looking at them smoking and became more integrated into the higher witness space.
I love that. I think that's probably what I'm getting at in Hopeful Healing, is that you can use mindfulness, but I never considered it as, like, for an addict, while you're doing a shot of heroin, to be really mindful that you're doing a shot of heroin.
Right.
You know?
Don't go unconscious.
Right, exactly. That is fascinating, something to consider, yeah.
Right. Now, in your chapter, Leaping Like Kierkegaard, on trusting yourself and others trusting you, you say that moving towards recovery is a do or don't kind of situation, as recovery requires demands, wants, and in fact needs choice and action. So, you really put it in the person's face. It's a do or don't kind of situation. And you're waking people up to the fact that they have to make choice and take action, like on a regular basis.
Because choice without action means it's an intellectual concept, right? It's just in your head.
Right.
But choice with action creates change. But they have to be together. You can make the choice and then not do anything about it, and then you're doing everything that is the antithesis of what you want, right? So then you create such conflict in the mind and heart and body. But if you marry choice and action together, you've got a really good shot at manifesting something really beautiful.
Absolutely. One of the things you write is about acceptance and control. And when combined with surrender, it equals a pretty amazing sense of release. You brought both of those together, acceptance and control, and combined with surrender. And that's kind of an odd pairing, too, control and surrender. What do you mean by that?
Well, I guess it is sort of oxymoronic or paradoxical, if you will. Mm-hmm. Well, let's see. Acceptance means this is the way it is. This is the isness of now, right?
Right.
Control means I don't want it to be the way it is.
Ah.
Surrender means I cease fighting things as they are. That doesn't mean that I don't have the opportunity to rise above or to manifest change. It means that I am at peace with things as they are so that I can have a platform from which to change.
And that's the part about surrender. So acceptance, you're accepting the fact. This is what's happening right now in my life. This is what I'm doing. Mm-hmm. And then control, you're talking like the control, alt-delete, like on a computer. You want this to shift.
Right.
And then surrender is you're opening yourself up and allowing something bigger to take place. You're letting go to something without acquiescing to negative circumstances.
There you go. That's it. Because a lot of people would think surrender means I wave the white flag, I give up.
Right.
I am beat. And if you want to look at it that way, you could. Or you could look at it as I cease fighting everyone and everything in order to be empowered to change my life.
Right. So I can see how you put that together. So it's actually what you're describing is a powerful spiritual paradigm.
That's correct.
You have to accept the facts. And then once you accept the facts, you can say, I really don't want this. I don't want to participate in this. But I'm going to surrender to something bigger. I'm going to surrender to something about me that hasn't been touched by time or circumstance. So that,
isn't that a beautiful thing to think about and do?
Yeah, for anybody in any kind of situation.
Yeah, it doesn't have to just be addiction or alcoholism. It can be anything.
Right.
That's why Hopeful Healing, although the main focus is addiction I borrow from a lot of wisdom traditions in the book, and I think it's really just good for life lessons or that type of thing, too, for people who might not even have an addictive disorder.
Absolutely. One of the things you talk about is that addiction itself fragments people into different pieces. The one's sense of self is supplanted by compulsive behaviors and the need to get the next fix. But when one is healthy, then his or her sense of self is of a self that is unified. And so you're really speaking on the addiction, that the fragmented self and the unified self. And again, it comes back to mindfulness and who we are as spiritual beings.
That's absolutely right. And that fragmentation can tell you, that I am my drug of choice. I am cocaine. I am vodka, where you're not. And I think that that's where that peculiar mental twist that might occur in most addicts or alcoholics is that they sort of believe that they sort of become a thing as opposed to a child of God, or a being capable of change.
Right. I really like the energy in your voice. You have a lot of power in your voice. You can tell there's a lot of life in you.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
I can't wait to meet you. I've always wanted to meet you.
Yeah, we're going to have a great time on Sunday. And Ricky Beebe is excited that you're coming. When I mentioned that you were on my radio program in the announcements, and we mentioned that you were going to be at the book signing, she couldn't help but say something on the microphone. Ricky, oh, she's coming. Everybody show up. Mackenzie's coming. She's a good.
I do love her.
She's a great being.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah. So that one of the things you write is that people want black and white certainties. Mm-hmm. They want to have formulas, give precise answers and guaranteed predictions, and to find the choice that caused a particular outcome. But one of the things that you bring about is that life is full of layers of choices and layers of results. Break that down for us.
Well, I think that everyone can identify with the fact that they would like to say, if I do this, if I engage in this behavior, this will be the outcome. I will get what I want. And that is sort of an illusion, right? I mean, we cannot predict the outcome of certain things. I mean, yes, if I, go to boil an egg and I boil it the way my mother taught me, generally I will get the egg that I want. But that's sort of like a scientific formula, whereas, just being is a very different thing. And so I think we really get caught up in thinking that things have to go a certain way, and when they don't, it feels like failure. And so I try not to be really tied to the outcome as opposed to, just letting it happen, letting it flow. What's going to happen? I don't know. It's kind of exciting. It's like an adventure.
It's again going back to a degree of mindfulness when you're right here in this moment and the outcome forms itself based on your attention in this moment. So you're not creating resistance or you're not creating acquisitiveness. You're here, and then life can surprise you. I call it sometimes spontaneous goodness.
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah, life can surprise you based on your moment-by-moment awareness. So this is very powerful. I love the way, anyway, that individuals who are freeing themselves from addictions, it's the same process that people have in waking up from the illusion that they're separate from God. Whether they're addicted to alcohol or addicted to busyness or television or entertainment or food or greediness or whatever, it's the same process of waking up.
It really is the same process of waking up, although I think, even though it is the same process, I think because of the layers of fog or spiritual deadness that come with addiction,
yes,
that it might be harder to push through that layer, although I'm not sure. But I think it's a longer process maybe than, although, what would you say about that?
No, I would agree with that. I mean, basically, the addict, it's like our addictions to the extreme.
Right.
And oftentimes the addict, and you can speak about this more clearly than me, is actually looking for that sense of connection that they may have received when they first started getting high.
Exactly. And then it stops working,
right,
but you can't not do it anymore.
Right.
I once met this wonderful man many years ago, and he was a recovering alcoholic, and he called himself the drunk monk. He had lived in a monastery for many, many years, and the first time I heard the spirits take the spirit was from him. And it's the same with drugs. The spirits take the spirit.
Wow.
And then the awakening has to occur, but first you have to put down the drugs.
Right.
The alcohol.
Right. When you talk about the early recovery process is oftentimes filled with fear, of course, but that the shift away from fear happens by the way of begetting. That is, one positive action begets another.
That's correct. And if you do one positive action and you don't know what the next one is, be mindful because it's generally indicated by the one you just did.
Mm-hmm. It creates momentum.
Correct.
Yeah. Mighty Mo takes over from inertia.
There you go, Mighty Mo.
Talk to us a little bit about, these are obviously deep, intractable things within us, but healing of shame and guilt and regret and how to release that during recovery, because I know that's big on the addict's list.
It's a really big one. I mean, if shame is who you think you are and guilt is what you've done, and then regret is, oh my gosh, I wish that had never happened, how can we shift that and use it as a tool to help others? How can we use it as a motivator so that we never find ourselves in that position ever again, right?
Absolutely. The other thing is self-forgiveness. You talk about it being crazy tricky is your language.
It's tricky.
Yeah. But it's necessary.
It's absolutely necessary. I mean, if you're forgiving someone to give yourself peace, then maybe you're forgiving yourself to give yourself peace as well and to give peace to the people around you, because when you're constantly caught up in that self-loathing and that fear of self and the inability to be willing to trust self, the energy that you emanate really affects the people around you, and it can be very toxic, I think. And so that act of self-forgiveness is just as beautiful and powerful as the act of forgiving those who trespass against you, if you will.
Absolutely. If you're just tuning into this special interview with Mackenzie Phillips, you know her as an actress best known for her roles in the movie American Graffiti, Teenager and Julie Cooper on One Day at a Time, the Disney movie So Weird. But now we're knowing her as an individual who has written High on Arrival and her latest book, Hopeful Healing, Essays on Managing Recovery and Surviving Addiction. And she's a go-to person to assist with inspiring people to break their addiction and assisting in that direction. So that's who I'm with, Mackenzie Phillips, who will be at Agape on Sunday after the 9 and 11:30 services for her book signing. And come on out and meet her if you will. Now, talk to us about making goals and managing bad days and what happens next while one is in recovery.
Well, I had this moment where I realized that I was either going to follow what people might expect of me or what I might expect of myself, or I was going to follow passion, right? And my goal became, what do I need? Because if I'm giving myself what I need and it's positive and it's beautiful, then that's not selfish, right?
Right.
And so I had this goal that I needed to find out what I was passionate about. And so when I decided to not follow expectation, because the expectation of someone like me would be I would continue to audition and continue to sort of seek out acting work and ride that train in the direction it's been going for decades, 40 years, right? But I realized that I needed to do something beautiful and powerful that was other-centered, not me-centered. And I went back to school, and now I work as a drug and alcohol counselor in a treatment center called Breathe Life Healing Centers right there in West Hollywood, because one can get so caught up in what others think we should do. And that means that our needs, our wants, our desires, our goals get put aside. And so I know I'm not exactly on track, but I did want to talk about expectation and passion and how we can create a reality that is beautiful, right, as opposed to doing the same thing because others expect us to do it.
Right. Now, do you still act as well?
Here and there. I mean, I'm actually not actively seeking acting work because I do work full-time and I do have a caseload of clients that I care for at Breathe. And so you can't really be both. You can't say to your client, oh, I hope the rest of your treatment goes well. I'm leaving.
I'm leaving.
I'll be back in 3 months.
Right.
You know?
So that's beautiful. You found your niche, and you found your way to give back and to assist people to basically transform lives based on your own personal experience.
I think a bunch of our clients were at the service last weekend.
You're right. It was like 35.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, they were sitting to my left. I had them stand up. Yes, they were.
All the breathers came out to the service on their outing.
Right.
They loved it.
Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah.
So before we close, there's a relationship, obviously, between trauma and substance use and addiction. Give us 30 seconds on that.
Okay. So the incidence of trauma survivors, meaning early childhood neglect, abuse, sexual abuse, rape, domestic violence, emotional abuse, the incidence of people who've experienced things like that who go on later in life to have a severe substance use disorder is off the charts because we're trying to medicate, we're trying to fill some space that's been vacated by passion, you know. And so in Hopeful Healing, I talk a lot about trauma and abuse and how that might come up in early recovery and how to deal with that. And I think it's really important that we have that component in there because it's so prevalent.
Now, in your book, Hope for Healing, do you have processes for people to follow?
Yeah, there's little exercises after each chapter that can give people a deeper experience of what they've just read, and they could find things out for themselves as they go through the exercises.
Outstanding. Well, is there anything that we didn't cover that you feel that you want to be able to say before we go off the air right now?
I just really am looking forward to Sunday. I can't wait to be there. I'm really looking forward to meeting everybody, and thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me today.
Absolutely. It's been my joy. Thank you, Mackenzie Phillips, for being with us. Thank you for your role in transcending your own demons, but more importantly, how you're helping others transcend theirs. And Hope for Healing, essays on managing recovery and surviving addiction. She will be there on Sunday to sign her book and to give you a hug after the 9 o'clock and the 11:30 service. If you haven't read High on Arrival, a must-read, very powerful book. And you'll get a great understanding of her telling her own story and the ways that she transcended self-destruction. That's Mackenzie Phillips. This is Michael Bernard Beckwith saying to all of you that there's something magnificent about you. There's something beautiful that has been untouched and untarnished by time. And every single day you want to walk in that direction. You want to ask a question. How can I serve? How can I be more myself? How can I deliver my gifts? How can I wake up to my intrinsic nature, which is joy and love and harmony? I embrace all of you in that particular direction. Invite you to Agape this Sunday. If you're not in Los Angeles, you can go to agapelive.com and live stream the service, and you can still order her books, Hope for Healing, essays on managing recovery and surviving addiction. I'll see you on Sunday. Have a bright day.